James Cook and Derrick Henry are the two running backs you need to buy now before their ADP goes up this summer. We'll explain why next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Magdziuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. And on today's show, we're taking a look at 6 players whose ADPs are going to rise this summer. You can set your watches to it. They're going to go up, so you should be buying them now before that happens. And Kate, let's start with a couple win now running backs. Who do you got?
We got to start with talking about Derrick Henry, who I know we do this every single year, Marcus. We talk about Derrick Henry. We talk about how he's aging, how he's not going to hold up forever. But I do think we're at a point where, we just got to ride the wave, right? We've got to just get over it. We got to keep doing it. Age 31 season, I don't really care. He averaged 5.9 yards per attempt last year in the regular season, 16 rushing touchdowns. My man is absurdly productive. He is absurdly efficient. Looking at what he accomplished here over the past year to lead the league or lead all running backs in with at least 100 carries and yards per attempt at the age of 31. That's absolutely absurd. He also ranked top 5 in yards after contact per attempt, ranked second only behind Saquon Barkley in terms of rush attempts of 10 plus yards. Like, if we're looking at pretty much anything except his age, we're saying he's a screaming buy.
Yeah, so right now, RB 18 on Dynasty League Football. A couple of running backs that are going ahead of him, Josh Jacobs, Quinshon Judkins, Kenneth Walker. If this were any other running back, I would be like, you know what? Sell now before the bottom drops out. And there's still a chance that it does. Like if we get to, next offseason, I think we're having a different story. But this is Derrick Henry we're talking about. And I just think he's one of the most unique running backs that we've had in the league over the last 2 decades, right? And the other part of this that's fascinating is that Lamar Jackson is such a cheat code for your offense and what he does for the running backs on his team, whether it's, you look at what he did for a washed up Mark Ingram later in his career, or Gus Edwards, who averaged 5 yards a carry every single time he touched the ball. Playing with Lamar Jackson just opens up these running lanes. And listen, Kate, you saw it in the Steelers-Ravens playoff game. Does that guy look like he's slowing down at all?
No, he's not slowing down. And the annoying thing is he just gets better and better with more contact and with more rush attempts. He is still the same runner. So again, from an efficiency standpoint, from a production standpoint, if we're looking at Derrick Henry and saying like, okay, what signs do we have that he's starting to let his age catch up with him, right? I can't come up with any because he was a top 5 fantasy running back here in the 2024 season. And guess what, Marcus? We started out the year a little bit uncertain. Finishes RB 31 in week 1, was kind of weirdly kind of game scripted out at some points. But when you look at the fact that this dude had 7 top 5 finishes at the age of 31, I just don't think he's lost enough. And I think the floor is so safe that I want to ride the wave as long as possible.
I just want to point out, we have our February ADP, which he was 43rd overall. Again, nothing has really happened from February to April. Now he's down to 55th overall. I know the rookie class is impacting that a little bit, but this rookie class wasn't strong enough to bring him down that much. The other thing of it, Kate, is, and this is why we're telling you to buy him now, he's RB 18. By the time we get to week 1, you're going to look at your fantasy lineups, and you're going to look at your week-to-week rankings, and he's just going to be a top 5 running back every single week. And one of the things we always say about the running back position is that this is just a year-by-year position. You can't feel great about almost any other running backs except Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Ashton Genty. Like those are the only guys you feel good about beyond the next 18 months. Go buy Derrick Henry now and go try to win a championship. I think you can do it at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, he's absolutely a excellent win now target, especially considering, again, that's just how we view the running back position. That's how you have to approach the running back position in Dynasty. Give us another running back that you think can help Dynasty managers win right now while they're in a competitive window at perhaps a value.
Yeah, so James Cook is RB14, just a couple spots ahead of Derrick Henry. And some of the names ahead of him include like Chase Brown, Travion Henderson, Christian McCaffrey, Kyron Williams, Brees Hall. And I think I would just rather have James Cook than all of those guys. Now, there's some concern because he's in the final year of his contract. He wants a new deal. He has not been present at OTAs. And I think that kind of stuff has us a little bit nervous. And if he were to leave Buffalo, I don't think that's great for his dynasty value and his fantasy value. But we've seen the Bills be pretty proactive with contracts. They've signed a bunch of players this offseason, including Terrell Bernard. They've signed, I was going to say Kyrie Young, Khalil Shakir. They've been very diligent in trying to get some of these contracts done. I think James Cook is next. He's just a perfect fit in the Joe Brady offense. And I think once that deal gets done, Kate, we're going to see his ADP go from RB14 to RB10, RB11. So now's a good time to buy.
Yeah. And I mean, again, for a guy that answered, I think the biggest question we had about him was, is he going to score touchdowns alongside Josh Allen? Or is Josh Allen just going to snipe them all? Well, he answered. And it turns out the answer is yes, he can still score touchdowns. Finishes RB8 in full PPR scoring last year. And I mean, what's changed about the offense? Really nothing. Josh Allen is still going to be Josh Allen. Running alongside a dual threat quarterback like Josh Allen opens up running lanes. And I'm going to be honest, just in general, was super impressed by like the tape that James Cook put out last season. Because we viewed him as kind of like the speed guy, the explosive playmaking guy. But there were moments in 2024 where I'm like, I was unfamiliar with your game, James Cook, because he was grinding out some yardage and he looked like a tougher running back than I feel like we've seen in years past. It translated to the fantasy scoring column. He had 4 top 5 finishes in all of last season. Was a pretty reliable RB1, RB2 any given week. And if he gets that deal, which again, I think both of us expect that to be the case, then yeah, if you're going to have a secure future, at least for the next year or two in an offense led by Josh Allen, we know there are going to be a lot of scoring opportunities and fantasy points abound.
Another reason why I kind of like buying James Cook is that there's just not a big workload on his body. Kate, he had, listen to this, 297 touches in college, 297. Ashton Genty had that by like November this year, right?
Yeah.
630 touches in the NFL through 3 years. So you're at 927 touches. Again, that's what Ashton Genty has coming out of Boise State this year. So yes, he's 25 years old, but he hasn't even reached 1,000 career touches yet. So I think there's a lot more tread on the tire. And I'm not going to be all that concerned about him during his age 25, 26, 27 season. Again, you can't project that far forward with these running backs, but I don't think there's any signs of wearing down. In fact, last year was his best year, and it sure seems like the Bills are going to lean on him more. They didn't draft the running back high. They just have Ray Davis backing him up. It sure seems like he's going to get a ton of work this year. I'm buying because I won't be surprised, Kate, if we get to the season, and again, like Derrick Henry, that's a top 5 fantasy running back every single week.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about a couple receivers that we are buying this offseason before their ADP goes up, including one from the Buffalo Bills. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. We saw it last night, like 2 unbelievable basketball games that came down to the final shot. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. One of my favorite things that FanDuel does is the race to 10. Which team will score 10 points first to start the game? It's so much fun. It's a great way to get action in the first 5-6 minutes of the game. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you'll get $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Okay, let's talk about some receivers that we're buying this offseason. I want you to go first because you have a very interesting name here. Who do you got?
We just closed out our first segment talking about a Buffalo Bill. So I think it's only right that we open up segment 2 talking about another Buffalo Bill. And for those longtime listeners of the show, this is about to break your heads straight open. Like, this is not going to be something that is expected of me. I have been widely critical of this player in most of his career leading up to this moment, but I think he might be a dynasty buy. And I'm talking about Bills wide receiver Keon Coleman entering his second season, who I had zero hopes for in year 1. But Marcus, there were a lot of people that had a lot of high hopes for Keon Coleman being the, projected de facto number 1 wide receiver there in that Buffalo Bills offense. And who's throwing him the ball in that Buffalo Bills offense? It's Josh Allen. We know Josh Allen targets are worth a lot. So yes, end of season stat line, not going to be overly impressive, but I want to give you a couple of stats that I thought were kind of intriguing in terms of Keon Coleman and his potential upside. Among the 88 wide receivers with 50 or more targets in 2024, Keon Coleman ranked 3rd in that cohort, averaging 18.1 yards per reception. He ranked 6th in that cohort with 17.1 yards after the catch per reception. He had the 5th highest average depth of target among that cohort, 15.4 yards. That led all players on the Bills. So what I think is really interesting in particular, sometimes we'll see with players that have like a really high yards after the catch per reception average, is that they're getting a lot of these kind of manufactured touches that, you get the ball in their hands based on blocking schemes and they just kind of take off and run. Mm-hmm. The fact that Keon Coleman has this really high average depth of target while also averaging a lot of yards after the catch, I find that intriguing. Now, for the bad, ranked 50th in that group in yards per route run, 2nd lowest catch rate at 50%, but he's 21 years old. And at one point last year, he had an average draft position on Dynasty League football in the 3rd round of startup drafts. Right now, on average, being drafted in the 8th, 21 years old, wide receiver, 48 in the latest batch of ADP. I think it's time to buy.
Yeah, so they put him in a really tough spot last year, Buffalo did, basically making him be an X receiver. And that's tough for any receiver, but certainly for one that struggles with separation. And we saw that play out. He was, as Matt Harmon likes to say, he was the sacrificial lamb as the X receiver. And they kind of just funneled their offense through Khalil Shakir and all of the middle of the field targets. And I would think the hope is this year with Matt Collins gone, that he's going to be the number 1 outside guy. But they did just pay Khalil Shakir. They brought in Josh Palmer, who can play on the outside a little bit. They did sign Elijah Moore. I do wonder, like, hey, this just might be Keon Coleman's opportunity to be the outside receiver. And for somebody that you can get right now at wide receiver 40 prices, okay, wide receiver 48, he's only 21 years old. Like there were multiple receivers in this class that were older than him. It's not a bad buy.
I don't really love the player, but I do think that this is kind of maybe my targeting of Keon Coleman in this sort of situation is maybe, I think, representative of an attitude that I think, dynasty managers do sometimes need to embrace, because we get kind of hung up on certain players. We have our draft crushes. We have these people that end up on like 90% of our dynasty rosters. And then sometimes you miss out because you get so laser focused on some players that like you forget where there's upside. And I do think at this price, Keon Coleman has some upside, being potentially that number one target in a Josh Allen offense. Like right off the rookie season, sometimes we don't see these players make a big leap. We knew Keon Coleman had issues separating before. Maybe they're going to get some more unique touches for him. Maybe they'll use him as, maybe a power slot a little bit, like move him around a little bit. I just think the upside is too fantastic to really pass up on that price, especially for such a young player who didn't have a great rookie season, but again, upside, baby. Sometimes you got to like put the wool over your eyes and say, I know I'm not a huge fan of this player, but situationally, I should probably get a few shares.
My guy is Zay Flowers, and I want to compare and contrast him with another receiver that's being drafted ahead of him. So Zay Flowers, wide receiver 23 on Dynasty League Football, 39th overall. I want to compare him to Devontae Smith, who is wide receiver 18, 30th overall. So you can get basically Zay Flowers an entire round later. Devontae Smith, over the first 4 years of his career, is averaging about 1,002 yards per game. Okay. He's also averaging about 6 touchdowns. Zay Flowers last year had 1,100 yards and 5 touchdowns. Okay. And again, those aren't huge numbers, but they're similar. Zay Flowers is the clear-cut number one receiver on his team, where Devontae Smith is not. Devontae Smith is the clear-cut number 2. They're both run-heavy teams, but when they go back to pass, Flowers is the top target. I would also argue that Lamar Jackson is a better quarterback and a better passer than what Jalen Hurts is. So explain to me why I can get Zay Flowers that much cheaper than I can get Devontae Smith right now.
I don't think you can. I think there's a general perception about like Zay Flowers. I think one of my kind of question marks is like, is he going to be a red zone guy, right? Ranked 42nd among wide receivers in terms of targets inside the 5 last year.
But Devontae Smith isn't a red zone guy either. Devontae Smith
scores
like 7 touchdowns every year.
I absolutely agree. He did have 2 more red zone targets last year, but that's fine. I just think,
but it's the same thing. It's like, it's just not a big enough gap to have them be separated by that much.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at, again, just the upside of Lamar Jackson as a passer. This is a guy that just threw for 4,000 passing yards, 40 touchdowns. Like, I know he's going to spread the ball around a little bit. We saw a little bit of a breakout for Rashad Bateman, but like Zay Flowers is that guy that I think they're going to funnel the offense through on an every down basis. Whereas the other people in the mix, I feel like, are kind of these chess pieces that they're going to work around Zay Flowers. There's also that.
I say we should mention that DeAndre Hopkins 1-year deal, Rashad Bateman on the last year of his deal. It sure seems like this is going to be the last year for Mark Andrews. Like, he's the only guy in this passing offense that you feel great about. Isaiah Likely, even on the last year of his deal. And he's got such a good connection with Lamar Jackson. It's shocking to me that you can get him outside the top 20 receivers, Kate. I just want to get him now because once we start seeing those training camp videos and everyone's reminded of how good of a player Zay Flowers is, I think, that was going to point out the other thing. He didn't play in the playoffs last year because he got hurt in week 18. I think he would have had some big games against Pittsburgh and Buffalo. And maybe because we haven't seen him in a while, that's why the ADP is dropping a little bit.
For sure. Always got to get value when the value is getting good.
Yeah. So that's 2 Ravens and 2 Bills that we've mentioned so far at the top of the show. But okay, let's turn our attention to some quarterbacks that we think are going to see a big rise in their ADP over the summer. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Skylight Calendar. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight Calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in one easy to see place. Listen, my family is always on the move between practices and daycare and a million of the other things we've got going on right now. It's hard to keep up with everything. But with our new Skylight Calendar, it makes it so easy to know what's going on each and every day. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That is skylightcal.com/NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stops. Hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Kate, let's talk about some quarterbacks. Which quarterbacks are going to see their ADPs go up over the next couple months?
I'm just patiently waiting for a million highlights to come out of Trevor Lawrence throwing to Brian Thomas Jr. and throwing like this is going to be, I think, the off season of Trevor Lawrence. I feel like every year is kind of the off season for Trevor Lawrence. Maybe it's felt like that. One. No, but for real, like you got Travis Hunter in the mix. You've got one of the best, I think, 1-2 punches, and maybe we're not like as hyped about that for Trevor Lawrence because of the question mark of like, how are they going to divide up snaps for Travis Hunter on both sides of the ball? But like, there is no doubt that he's got probably the best 1-2 punch in terms of wide receiver talent in the NFL, and he's going to be throwing to him. I think that paired with the coaching change, like everything has been a plus in the win column, I think, for Trevor Lawrence, all of these moves that have been made by the Jaguars this offseason.
Yeah, we've already started to see the ADP rising because at one point this offseason, he was down to quarterback 23. Kate, in January, his overall ADP was 173 in one QB leagues. It's up to 153. But you could still get him at QB 20. And you're right. Like the first Travis Hunter highlight we see, that ADP is going to skyrocket. And you're going to see him go past quarterbacks like Dak Prescott and Tua and those guys. So I'm with you. I'm buying Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. And again, just one of those circumstances where like things are lining up. And yeah, I know we've been pretty overall disappointed with Trevor Lawrence. He was, tabbed as this generational talent, and it just hasn't looked like that. But I also, want to acknowledge that circumstances have not been totally ideal for him in the coaching column. He hasn't, necessarily been perfectly healthy throughout his career either. That's been a problem. But when you're looking at, is there upside here left? I think there's a lot more meat on the bone than you would guess based on his current ADP of QB 20.
My quarterback is Brock Purdy, and my feelings on Brock Purdy. I'm not the biggest Brock Purdy fan, but when I see QB 15 ranking right now, and I know that he's going to be attached to Kyle Shanahan for the foreseeable future, I do think this is a good time to buy because we know that the dynasty market can be fickle, and we also know that they can overreact to sometimes the slightest bit of news. Once he gets that contract extension, which is coming, like it's going to happen in the next couple months or so, we're going to see his ADP go up. And the reason for that is just because it's going to guarantee that he's locked into a starting job with Kyle Shanahan. And that's incredibly valuable. And I think once we start to see Brandon Ayuk get a little healthier and back on the practice field, and we start to see maybe Ricky Pearsall making more plays, and we see a healthy Christian McCaffrey, I think it's going to go up. Now, I don't think he's going to suddenly be a top 10 or 12 dynasty quarterback, but do I think there should be a 35 spot gap between Jordan Love and Brock Purdy? No, I don't. Do I think there should be that big of a gap between Baker Mayfield and Brock Purdy? No, I don't. So I do think now is a good time to buy because he's only going to get more expensive.
Yeah, we definitely saw that step back, but you mentioned all of the injuries in that offense that I think were pretty monumental in terms of like Purdy's upside as a passer. Something I think we also have seen, over the past season is some growth in terms of his rushing upside, right? Average 4.9 yards per rush attempt, 323 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns on the ground. That's, I think, seeing his mobility and seeing him get a little bit more comfortable utilizing that mobility in extending plays, I think makes him a really intriguing buy, knowing that, all right, the weaponry around him should be healthier. We're going to get back with the same play caller. Like, what's really changed all that much? Like, did Deebo Samuel move the needle for you that significantly? No. You have Juwan Jennings,
George Kittle's back.
Yeah, George Kittle's back. Like, I think, yeah, I think
this offense is going to be much better than it was last year. Just everything went wrong between Deebo getting fat, Brandon Ayuk tearing his ACL in like week 2, week 3, Christian McCaffrey basically missing the entire season, the offensive line injuries that they had, like everything that could have went wrong did, including Brock Purdy getting banged up. I just think, and this is the same logic I have with Derrick Henry, once the games start, you're going to want to have Brock Purdy in your lineup. And that's why I think right now is a good time to buy, because I'm not sure the price is ever going to get lower.
Yeah, especially with that contract extension looming. It sounds like they're going to get it done. And Brock Purdy is going to be the long-term option in a Kyle Shanahan offense. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Make sure you check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.